and then make sure it goes live. And I'm checking YouTube.
I am too.
Yeah, it's live on YouTube. Sweet. All right. Sweet. Give a minute or two. It says 5 p.m.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Shall we get started with at least view of the announcement we wanted to do?
Yeah. So hello and welcome everybody to GDG PDX first online streaming event. We've kind of gone dark for COVID, but we're trying to come back online in the pandemic world. And Alexis, our co-organizer, is going to give us a great presentation on foldables. Before we get started, just want to give a quick notice that GDGs are moving platforms. There's a new platform that Google is creating to support them. We're going to be moving off Meetup over time. I will send a link to the new GDG registration page in the Meetup. So if you're part of the Meetup now, you'll get an email with that, or you can look on the Meetup and you'll see it as a discussion group. So look for that, and please do join our new group. With that, I'll hand it over to Alexis.
So hi everyone. So thanks for joining today. So it will be our first live stream. So hopefully everything will go as smooth as possible. But you know, things may go haywire. We'll try to try to fix it on the go. So the presentation today is about foldables and how you can adapt your web experience, your website, web apps, PWA to this new class of devices that are coming on the market. So today I'm presenting, but this presentation was put together with my colleague Kenneth, and as well as my friend and colleague, working together, Zuir from Microsoft. With that said, let's get started. Okay, so hi everyone, my name is Alexis. So I don't know if we met before, but I'm based in Portland, Oregon. I work for Intel, and I'm part of the web platform engineering team at Intel. And you can find me on Twitter if you have questions and want to discuss dual screen with me and foldable. And so yeah, my main job these days is really working on those new form factors and devices and how we can bring them and how they can be supported on the web. So my mission, my job at Intel is not just working on the standard part. So we work, our team, actually the entire web platform engineering organization at Intel works at the W3C, so the World Wide Web Consortium. and also so where we define web standards and discuss with Google, Samsung, Apple, Mozilla, and so forth. But our organization and myself as well, we're also involved into the implementation of those standards. We contribute to Chromium, which then goes to Chrome and now Edge and Opera and all those things. So we try to not only work on the standard, but also on the implementations of them. So everyone asked me, and I kept this question kept every time I do a presentation, everyone asked about this and why Intel care about the web. And at the end, we are known for hardware, CPUs, and whatnot, and why we are even involved with the web. So it's quite easy. I mean, these days, and anything you do on the hardware, if you don't have the software that goes with it, then it's kind of pointless, right? So any new feature we put on CPUs, then there ultimately needs to be enabled on the software, and then ultimately surface the developers that are going to use those features, right? The other thing is, if you look at the usage of a computer, right, we know, thanks to Microsoft and thanks to our telemetry as well, that 60% of the time, users spend 60% of their time on the browser doing web stuff. So it's obvious that at Intel, we want to make sure that the web works perfectly on our hardware, so that it's not only optimized, but it provides good battery life, as well as capabilities. Right? We want to make sure that when you spend your more than half of your time, then it's an enjoyable experience, and you can do more on the web, right? So that's why we care about it. Also, because at Intel we don't do platforms, so we don't really do a lot of SDKs, so to say. We don't own an app platform, and the web is a great place for us because it's neutral, right? It's a standard. There's a standard process. We go to discuss with other companies and try to move the web forward. But also at Intel, we believe that the web is actually awesome, and because you can just put a website and then you have a gigantic reach. It's very low friction, right? I can just give you a URL and then you click on it and then opens your browser and you're there, right? There's no app store to go download, sign up, and all those kind of things. Also, the web is pretty safe, right? It's a safe place. Like, I mean, sure, there could be abuse and everything, but when you click on the URL, you kind of, trust the browser to do a great job for you to make sure that whatever happens on that website stay on the sandbox of the browser, and it is not going to break your machine down. That's often not true with a random app that you will download and just install it and ask for administrative rights, and you don't really know what's going to happen, right? So the other a good property of the web, it's indexable, right? So you put up a website, you bring it up on your server, and then some search engine is going to pick it up at some point, being Google, whatever. The other things that we like with the web is it's ephemeral, right? You go to a website, some things are going to put into cache, but at some point, after some criteria, then the cache is going to be cleared up. Then, if you've seen the website once, then you don't have to worry about like uninstalling an app, or make sure that the app that you used once is not draining your battery with background tasks and stuff like that, right? So another good property of the web, it's linkable, right? As I was mentioning, a URL is just what you need to go somewhere, but you can also deep link, which is a very nice a feature of the web. You can, for example, share a link of a tweet, not just twitter.com, so which is very convenient. And also it works cross-platform, right? Whether your user is Android or iOS or whatever, or desktop or a tablet, then you just share the link and it's going to work, so it's good. And then the last bit that we like with the web, it's composable, right? You can embed pieces of other content into your own content. So say you're writing a blog post and you want to embed a video, then you can embed a YouTube video in your blog post, or you can embed a Twitter tweet in your blog. So this is a good property as well of the web. And the last really good thing that we like with the web is that it scales across form factors and device, right? Since day one, the web was made so that it will run on various, screen resolution And then when the mobile era started, then you not only would be, smaller resolution, but the input method would change. It would be something like, touch and versus mouse and keyboard, right? So the web is great at that. When you create a website these days, then you have to think about all of those devices, and then you have to, with the single code base, you can typically target pretty much all the form factors across the industry, across the market. So let's going back to the subject of foldable and dual screen. I'm going to try to define what we mean by foldable, dual screen, and all those things so that it's clear to everyone. I'm not talking about this. When I say dual screen, I'm not talking about those kind of setup where you have a laptop plus an external monitor, or in this case, this gigantic amount of monitors. I'm talking about something more like this. So it's basically a device that has two physical screens, and they are connected through any hinge that can usually rotate 365, like something like this that you can see on my stream. So and that is the new form factor. That's what we mean with dual screen. They enable interesting new features, like, for example, the keyboard becomes an accessory that you can place on the second screen, and it actually has magnets to stick into the screen, and then it can fold on the back as well if you don't need it to. So, which is pretty cool. So you can have double the screen estate on the same form factor, basically. Foldable screen. So when we mean foldable screen, we mean actually screen that can physically fold themselves. So typically OLED screen that can fold onto themselves. So think about the Galaxy Fold, the Galaxy Z Flip, the Galaxy Z Fold 2. The other thing, Lenovo just launched their foldable PC a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. So it's the Lenovo X1 Fold. So that device also fold in half, and then it's a foldable screen. So that's the difference between a dual screen and a foldable screen, right? The interesting part of the foldable screen is that they really provide you also a lot more screen estate on a similar, footprint, right? So, or in the case of the Z Flip, the idea of Samsung was that I'd like to give you still a big screen, but when you fold it, then the device becomes very tiny, so it's very pocketable. So, so yeah. So what we're seeing is there is a new set of devices that are emerging. They're still expensive, but as we've seen this in the past over and over and over, the technology will ultimately improve, and the price is going to go down, and it's going to be more affordable, and then ultimately going to go to the masses, right? So because they enable, either ultra portable experiences, or they are they also provide you flexible experiences too. You can use it as a tablet, you can use it as a regular laptop, and we'll get to that as well. And they're extremely good at multitasking, especially dual screen devices. They're extremely good at, when you're on the go and you need to multitask. Those are great devices for that. Even the Galaxy Z Fold is a great device for that. So in terms of what we're trying to do on the web right now to make sure that you can, on your website, support those devices and provide the best experience possible, we're working on several fronts, actually. First, we're looking at a CSS feature, so that allows you to know if your application is spanning across the two screens, on the case of a dual screen. We're also looking at a JavaScript APIs to access the various, what we call segment or zone when you have a dual screen. I'm going to explain that. And then we also have a dedicated API for folding foldables with foldable screens. And then the last is addressing the virtual keyboard situation that is a bit more complex on dual screen or a foldable. So yeah. But everything, even though they are new devices, they're basically relying on simple concept and some things that you're familiar, right? The only new thing is that on the same form factor, they can provide you different posture. We call that posture, different ways of using it. So in the case of a foldable, you can use it as a laptop And then if you open it fully, it can be a tablet flat, right? You can, in the case of a dual screen, you can use it in tent mode, like something like this, right? So, and or you can use it as a book, like this. So it's pretty interesting. And then also, if they like the X1 Fold, the PC has a little kickstand. So when you fully open it, you can actually make it sit on as a tabletop, and then it becomes your monitor. And then the keyboard is detachable, so you can use it on the go anywhere. So it's pretty interesting. So let's talk about the CSS screen spanning media feature, and let's cover what those. So the cool part of the screen spanning media feature is that it's just like any other CSS media query. So if you're not familiar with CSS media queries, it's basically a way to access in CSS some of the capabilities and configuration of the on the viewport. For example, what's your minimum width? What's your maximum width? Are you in portrait mode? Are you in landscape mode? And according to this, we're going to match your media queries, and then you can execute pieces of CSS code and do responsive layouting and relayout depending if you're in portrait or landscape, for example. The good news is for dual screen, we make it simple when you span across the two screens. So your application is rendered across the two screens, then it's still only one viewport. So we keep it simple. It's still the same. And you can react to that and then adapt your layout accordingly. So what are the values? So you can be a single fold vertical. So basically the device is being used vertically, and then there's a single fold in the middle. It can be used horizontally. So you flip the device around, and then the fold becomes like kind of this configuration. None, which is it's not spanning at all. So it's just like a monitor, like just like normal situation. So but then your question is, why do I need the fold posture? Why, beside the hinge itself, why do we need this? And Alexi, we have the orientation media feature. We also have the ratio, so I should be able to compute the ratio and then use the orientation to figure out how the device is being used. Is this enough? And actually, it is not. Here's an example. So on the left side, if I'm using the device in landscape, but I'm not spanning, my app is in portrait. So the device is being used in landscape, but the app is in portrait mode. And then you can imagine various ways of a dual screen with different aspect ratios that could be used where the configuration doesn't match the actual physical way you are actually using the device. So that's why we need a way to tell you about how what's the current posture. So let's give a simple example. So here's a CSS declaration where I say my body is orange. So on all the devices, then everything's going to be orange. Now let's use the media queries, and then I say if your maximum width of your viewport is 540 pixels, say it's a mobile phone basically, then change your background green, and that's going to happen, right? On a mobile phone, the background will be green. On a dual screen, if you use the screen spanning media queries, then you can match to the single fold vertical and then say background yellow, and then you can apply a given style specifically for dual screen devices. Right? So that's quite easy to do. It's a very familiar concept to web developers, so that's great. Now on a dual screen, how you render things is slightly different because there's the physical hinge. And on a foldable, you don't have that problem, right? The only thing you have is the little seam when it's open, but the screen renders like the entire app. There is nothing occluded because of the physical hinge, right? So what do we encourage people to do when they design for dual screen is think about when the application is spanning across the two screen, is think about the fact that you have two zones, or we call it segment in the standard. So you can design on the left side, for example, if you were to do a mail client, then you will do the list of email on the left side, and then on the right side, you will do the list, the conversation of the current open email, for example. On a newspaper, news website, you would have your regular feed of news on the left side, and then when you click on one of them, it opens the detailed view on the right side. So this is the way, this is the kind of new UX pattern we want people to think about when they design for dual screen. However, you can also just make sure that your app looks good on a dual screen. Like, for example, this calendar view. Think about, I don't know, your favorite calendar app on the web, that instead of cutting contents like it does right now on this diagram, then you will just adapt the column view so that it will design around the hinge, right? So we have a little example here of a website that I've created, and if you it's just a typical gallery. It works great here. You can see it, right? And then when we span it across the two screen, right, like this on the simulator, then certainly the experience is not that great, right? Like images are cut, and then of course when I open the gallery and then open the full picture, then it doesn't look good, right? So we need to rethink that experience, right, for dual screen. And then there are little details like dialogues. Typically, the UX pattern for dialogue is you center it in the middle of the viewport. But for a dual screen, it means it's going to center right in the middle of the hinge, which is not that great. So you have to, decide where you want to put it, left or right, basically, depending on your application. But then we can enable new things and improvements to the application. For example, this little picture editor where you will click on an image, then typically on a single screen device, you will have to click on edits, and then the toolbar will come on the bottom, occludes the user pictures, and then you can start messing around with the settings. But with a dual screen, you can decide to open on the right side and then have the slider always available to the user without occluding any content on the left, which is pretty cool. So in this same demo I was showing about the photo gallery, we adapted it so that we use the left side as a scrolling list and then the right side as the detailed view when you select one picture. And then we can actually even show more information, which is great. In this case, we wrote a little legend. So we know the posture, right? We're going to tell you how it's being used, if it's single fold, horizontal, vertical, and then you can relay out according to that. But you still need more information to be able to, know how big are each of the segment, each side, right? Plus, you need to know the width and the height of the hinge, right? So for that, we're giving the standards is adding new environment variables. So CSS environment variables. Those were added by Apple when they launched the iPhone 10 because they had the notch and so the camera cut out basically. So we needed to tell the web developers to not put content under the notch basically. So we're using the same infrastructure and defining new environment variables. So to tell you about a hinge, right? So we're going to tell you fold left. That's going to be, the position right before the hinge. And then we can also tell you the top. That's the position right before the hinge as well. And then we also define a bunch of them. So the fold width and the fold height. And then that's enough for you to lay out content. When I wrote demos, I personally gave the feedback to add more of those environment variables. So for example, an end fold right to make it easier for people. So because if you wanted to position content around here, so you have to do end fold left plus the width to then get the right. So I think we're going to add those convenience environment variables later in the standard. So the window segment enumeration API, that one is basically mirroring the same concept of segments and zone, but in JavaScript, because you may not have CSS available. Say you're running a game with the canvas in WebGL or Canvas 2D, then you don't really have CSS. So we provide a very simple JavaScript API, which has only one function, which gives you the window segments, so and gives you a rect with their geometries, basically top, origin, and then width and height, basically, which is good. It's simple. So on a regular monitor, then regular computer with a single screen, it's going to just return 0. On a dual screen, it's going to return two segments, and then each of the segments would have its own, top left and width and height, basically. So, for example, in this case, the first segment is at 0, 0 in the coordinates, and so and then on those ones we can we are going to give you where the segments are located, basically. One thing that you have to be aware with the Windows segment JavaScript API, and it's a limitation of JavaScript, is that you have to keep querying the Windows segments whenever you detect an orientation change, meaning the device has been rotated, the segments, each of the segment geometries is going to change. So you have to listen for the orientation change event, and then ultimately requery the segments to then relay out your content. Same thing for resizing. Resizing means that the application was not spanned and becomes spanned, or was spanned and then not spanned. So that means that the viewport gets resized from what is across the two screen to one screen, or from one screen to two screens, right? And same thing, you have to requery the Windows segment to make sure that you relay out accordingly. So when you use the JavaScript API, as I was saying, whenever you work on non-DOM targets, so where CSS is not available to you, I'll give you some example. Anything with the layout that you compute yourself, so I don't know, custom lists, where you need to relay out on the go, then CSS doesn't really apply to you. Maybe with the CSS, that should be fine, but at this point, not really. One of the things we heard as well is the good part of the Windows segment and immersion API. It's future-proof, meaning that if one day we come up with devices that have two folds or more, then we just return you a bigger array. So that's pretty cool. However, the media CSS screen spanning feature right now, as I was showing before, has two values, right? Single fold vertical, single fold horizontal. And that is not very future-proof. So if one day devices come with more than one fold, then the API doesn't work. So at this point, we're working with the CSS working group, as well as inside the foldable dual screen community, to try to future-proof this so that the screen spanning feature works for any number of screens, right? Any screen topology. So expect the standard to be updated a little bit. Now let's go to the virtual keyboard. So the virtual keyboard, it's another issue that we have with dual screen that we didn't have before. So here's the virtual keyboard behavior today on a mobile phone. So you have a website with a text box, text input, then you click on a text, then the viewport gets resized, then the text is on top of the virtual keyboard. So the virtual keyboard do not occlude the inputs. The reason we do that automatically is that back when mobile phone came in the market, then we didn't want to ask every single web developers of every single website to adapt their behavior so that it will support mobile phones. So that's why it's done automatically. However, on a dual screen, it's a problem. Because if I do this, if I have my windows spanning across the two screen, and then I click on the text, then the viewport become resized as well on the left and the right. And suddenly I'm starting to see the desktop, your home screen of your device, right? And that's an issue. That's not a good experience. What we really want is something like that, right? You just click, the content on the left stay put, and then the content on the right, shift. So what we're trying to do is adding a new virtual keyboard object where you can opt in to say, I know how to deal with the virtual keyboard, so I'll be able to relay out accordingly. So you opt in, and then you can achieve something like this, where you click, the virtual keyboard on the left didn't move, but on the right, you see that the keyboard shows only, and then the content, the green content doesn't scroll at all, right? So it works as expected. And the way you can support this, it's quite easy, actually. You get a new event that comes on the virtual keyboard object that says, hey, my overlay geometry changed. So basically, I'm appearing. And then here is my current position in the screen. So do whatever you need to do so that the current focused input or whatever object is visible and not occluded. That's also pretty relevant for keyboards like the one I was showing on the X1 Fold, where the keyboard can be placed any position on the bottom screen when using laptop mode. So that's actually, you need to know exactly the position, not just the top left and then the width and the height, because depending on where it goes on the screen, then you have to change the position of the page and the scrolling. So here's an example, right? You can see that if it's placed on top, then the bottom part is a trackpad, so that's fine. Then the reports resize, everything's on top. But then on the bottom, then you can see some other things, and then it can be used differently. So suddenly the keyboard becomes of a problem. So that's why we need to provide new APIs for developers to be able to react to this. The last piece of work we're doing on the to support dual screen and foldable is the screen fold API. So this one is my coworker at Intel, Kenneth, and Diego at Samsung, who now is working at Microsoft. So they worked on that to have a dedicated specification to handle foldable displays. So as we shown for dual screen as well as foldable, there are many ways you can use them, and there are different postures, and you really want to inform the developers that what posture the device is being used. Especially, for example, if it's in a tabletop mode, you would expect that the interaction would be with mouse and keyboard primarily, right? If it's flat, then it's most likely being used as a tablet or as touch, right? If it's in a tent mode, it's touch. If it's in a book, lab, all of those different posture. And so we want to tell the developers how the device is being used so that they can adapt the experience, right? Here's an actual physical example of the Lenovo X1 Fold with the keyboard used as a laptop. Looks like a regular, laptop. But you can detach the keyboard and then you have that big screen estate and then type on the side. Or you can use it as a mini monitor on the go. And so, yeah, that's interesting use case. And we want the web to be able to leverage this. So the Screen Fold API right now is in an official draft. We're trying to get it officially put into a charter to try to move that forward. And then, so the way it exposed primarily two things. It exposed the postures as CSS media queries, so you can react to them. And then the last bits of information, in case you need it, is the actual fold angle when you open the device, right? So how many degrees it's been opened. So we're trying to standardize how many degrees means a laptop / book mode, when is the flat mode, and when is the tent mode, and when it's being closed and stuff like that. So we don't expect you to dig the fold angle value, but most like the convenience of using the posture it's better. But if you ever need it, then you can. So why we need this? Here's a quick example. Say you're using the device, so this Galaxy Z Flip, for example, in a flat angle. So it's a regular phone. You use your favorite video conference app. You expect the hang up button on the bottom and then the picture or your stream to take the maximum amount of space, right? However, now you want to be hand-free and you use this little half laptop mini posture where the angle is 90 degrees. Then you don't want the stream to be half down, right? Because that's not what you're seeing when you talk to people, to the other person. So you want to shift the layout accordingly. So that's how you would do it with the screen fold posture, right? You can, if it's a laptop and then if it's folded horizontally, then adapt the cooling areas and the controls basically, which is pretty easy to use. And of course, you could also use the rotation, the fold angle to actually rotate things on when you open the device, right? So we had this little demo where these fishes are rotating as you open the device following the angle. So yeah, you can do that. You can, query the screen fold object, and then whenever it changed, then you can, react to it. And then there's a little polyfill you can use as well. So if you want to play with that today, you can use this little polyfill web component where you can modify the angle and see how it reacts, and then how your media queries and your prototyping is working, and how you can test that. So that's really convenient. So yeah, what's the status and the progress so far? So it's pretty much experimental. At this point, the reason why, for example, I'm talking about it today is that we're at the point where we would like a lot of feedback from developers to make sure we design an API that is easy to use and that covers all what they need. But so the CSS spanning media query, you can try it. You can activate the flag on your desktop browser, and you can play with that. And then on the Surface Duo, there is an origin trial going. So if you want to, an origin trial is a way for you to experiment with the tech for a certain period of time on your domain. So you can, kind of give it a shot, try on, a percent of your users, for example, and then see how it goes. Same thing for the Windows segment enumeration API. It's also an experimental behind the flag, but there's also an origin trial on Edge. The ScreenFold API at this point, there's a mini prototype on a Samsung Internet, probably not shipping, but at least, to try to, prove the implementation. And then the virtual keyboard, it's also behind an experimental flag that you can try today. So all of this is pretty experimental. We are at the point where we would like a lot of feedback. So yeah, as I was saying. But you can play with that today, even though you don't have devices and so on, because we provide, just like this ScreenFold API polyfill, we provide polyfills for the spanning CSS that you can use. It's on npm.js, right? npm.js, so you can use it on your regular desktop, and then we're just going to split the viewport in half, pretending it's a dual screen, and then you can already develop for it, right? Try prototype on your desktop. You don't really need the device. Same thing for the Windows segment enumeration API. There's a polyfill published on npm. And then I did a little also a foldable configurator web component that actually can help you, trying different for CSS media query, screen spanning, whether it's spanning horizontally, vertically, and different devices and so on. Let me actually show it to you right now. So we have this little website here, and then there's this little foldable configurator here, which is dropped on your page when you add the web component. So it's a regular, use website, so to say. And then if I click on this, then it's going to trigger it, so it will lay out accordingly. So if the seam was in the middle, and then if I then it will lay out again. And then if I maximize it, then for example, and put it even bigger, then it can emulate, for example, the Surface Neo, and then you can see that would look like on the Neo. And then if it was the Duo that just came out last month, then same thing, you can have an idea. So you see that no content's being cut and it's being resized. If it was not adapted, then this is the experience that we would get, right? Which is not that good. So yeah, this is a pretty nifty web component. I use it a lot to do the demo. So yeah, and then so of course we had to eat our own dog food, so we created a few demos, and then Kenneth helped me. Actually, I wrote most of them. So and then so for example, this one we show it's the photo gallery. So I mean, I don't need to show it again, right? So I guess you got it. It's just adapted. So for now, it's just a regular photo viewer, and then when you span, we provide a dedicated UI for it, so which is a bit better. And then this demo is the battleship. Actually, I can show it to you live on the device. Let's see if that works. So I'm no streamer, but should see it like this. So I have the device. So as you can see, it's a 360-degree hinge. So for example, if I use this photo gallery demo that we have, right? So you see that's how it looks, right? It's not spanning, so I'm still providing the same experience as if it was on a desktop. But if I span the window across the two screen, then the experience will flow, and then I can, change the pictures and stuff like that, right? So what it starts to be a bit cool is, for example, when I start leveraging the form factor. So in this case, there is this little battleship game, where you have to sync to your opponent's ship. So in this case, I have a main screen that actually say, hey, you know what? If you span the device, if you span the window across the two screen, then I provide you a better experience. So Captain's telling me to span it, then I can just do like this, and then create a new game, and then oops, and then you can see here I can let it there and then play this little game. So I can fire, try to find him, and it's going to try to find my boat. So yeah, that's pretty neat. And then you can go even further in the case of so this one, for example. So that would be it again, but as you see, it's kind of awkward when the device is open like this. Like, I mean, to touch this thing. So you could use it like this, right? As a single, game, right? So I could use it like this and then play a game. But even better if, of course, I died. If I span it and then rotate the device like this, and then resume, then I have the controls on the bottom, right? So it's actually pretty cool. It's the kind of differentiated experience you could give to your user, right? So yeah. Then going back, next slide. Up. And then if you're curious about how I did the little battleship demo, then I just, thanks to Microsoft, I published on their devlog today a little, quick explanation on how I developed the battleship demo and what was the tweaks that we had to do to make it work great on a dual screen, and give it some tips and tricks and how I used all this stuff I was talking about. We also have DevTools support, so that's the good news. Probably it's going to mean that the polyfill is going to be less useful because if you have DevTools support, you can try it right away from DevTools. But at least the polyfills are going to be useful for maybe Safari or Mozilla users up until they implement the standard. So if you go on your favorite DevTools on Chrome or Edge, then if you click on the device icon over there, you can select a device, and then you can select the Surface Duo. So and then you can see how your website fare on a dual screen, which is pretty cool. Right now, it's still you have to activate as a special feature in the DevTools, but at some point it's going to ship stable. So you can try right away. So and then you can try to see if you can already adopt some of the things and to improve the layout of your website for dual screens and foldables. I just want to mention quick additional work that's going in parallel with this dual screen / foldable, especially the stuff that Google has been doing in regards to supporting external screen when you're connecting to your desktop. So think about, for example, if you had a Surface Duo dual screen and you connect an external monitor, because that's possible. How this thing work and how we're gonna have, how we can, support all those crazy use cases. So Google is at this point was focusing on, being able to enumerate the screens that are connected to the computer, so physical screen and logical screen, right? And then being able to notify when changes occurs, right? So you can, adapt your application accordingly. And then also being able to place window in a separate screen, right? Say you're a PWA, you're opening a link or whatever, and then you want that window to be on a different screen, right? So they've been focusing on that. And then the tech feedback that they got, the technical architecture group, from W3C was like, hey, we have to make sure that these APIs also work well. They play together with foldable and dual screen. And then they made it a single space called multi-screen window placement. So there is a lot of interest to make sure that all of this works well with dual screen and foldable, so that it's not confusing to developers. The TPAC, which is our annual W3C developer standard meeting, is happening at the end of this month. And we're going to discuss exactly this and then all those changes that we want to do on the specification to address the feedback that we received so far. And so yeah, stay tuned. There will be some changes for sure coming along the road. And then also what we want to do is trying to move beyond one fold. That's really our main focus. At this point, the technology is very expensive. Design hinges are very expensive. And the tech behind the foldable screen is also a bit, fragile. Samsung is making headways a lot. And Lenovo also on the X1 Fold has been pushing the boundary as well, because you can use a pen on it, so a stylus. But as the thing matures, then the price will come down, and we can totally expect that in the future there'll be devices with maybe 2 hinge or 3. Who knows? There will always be a trade-off between usability and price, right? I mean, it's like 2 hinges is going to be very costly to develop, but yeah, you could totally imagine a gamer laptop that folds, right? And then you could kind of fold a second, like another display, a side display that can show stats of your game, so that it doesn't pollute your main screen area, for example, or like you're streaming and then you want to see your preview as you play the game, right? So we can totally think more than one fold, probably not 10 or 20, but at least maybe 2. It's not too crazy. Probably in the next 3 to 5 years at the very least. But yeah, the standards on the web they stay forever. So we have to make sure they are future-proof as much as we can with the information that we have right now. So I strongly suggest you join the effort. Please try the APIs. Please try the demos. Please tell us what you think, and we'll be more than happy to hear any proposals to make it easier for you, or what doesn't work, what works, or is it too complicated? Should we have 1 spec, 2 specs? So yeah, please. Right now, if you want to be part of the discussion, so device and sensor working group is the place for the Fold API. The CSS working group is obviously the place for all the screen spanning media queries that we're proposing here. And then there is this new second screen incubation group that contains the Windows segment API, as well as the window placement that Google has been working on. So yeah, you can find them on the internet, and then you can just join discussions, provide feedbacks through GitHub, for example. With that said, thanks for listening. Yeah. Please feel free to reach out to me on Twitter if you have any questions, or send me an email or whatever. Yeah.
Great content as always. Thank you so much.
And I don't see, if you have any question, you can ask them on Twitter. On the YouTube comments, and then we can reply. Try to reply. I can try to reply here. If you don't have any question or you're too shy, that's fine. Just ask me on Twitter.
I have a question since I'm here.
Okay.
What do you think the percentage of the market will ever be in foldable devices?
The market, the size, you mean the market share?
Right, like market share. Like tablet tends to be around, 8 to 10, depending on platform. Where do you think foldables will end up in that?
I think when the price point will decrease, then we see that's going to democratize a lot more. It really brings you a bigger screen estate in a smaller form factor, and you can totally see these devices that for people that are on the road, which is not the case right now, but that salesperson where they can have this laptop, they can have this monitor, they can use that on the go. It's like much better than what's currently on the market, right? So prototype that Intel showed last year, which was the horseshoe bin, when unfolded, it's 17-inch monitor in a form factor of a 13-inch. So it's pretty cool. I think in the next 2 to 3 years, I think we're going to see more models in the next 2 years, and then in 5 years from now, I think it's going to be, people will consider this as like, hey, this is pretty cool. It's like, and it's affordable. So yeah, and then I see questions about simulators. So on simulators, good question on that. Microsoft has released an emulator for the Surface Duo. So you can use the Android emulator that you do for your Android, development, and then use the Surface Duo emulator, so you can actually try on the emulator. And then for the Microsoft also put up an image of Windows 10X where it was the Surface Neo, so you can also try that. It's probably still online. And otherwise, there's this little web component that I wrote. It's pretty good already, for simulating dual screen, right? I'd be more than happy to add more and more devices to that mini simulator just to see how it looks. One thing that I didn't explain, but that little web component that I wrote is actually the preview is using the same pixel ratio as the device, right? So actually, let me show you, for example. If you look at it here, so if you increase it again here, you can see if I'm on the Duo, it looks like this, right? Actually, this is not a good demo because I think it's going to look exactly the same. Yeah, so let me take the photo gallery. So on the photo gallery, so if you open it like this, right? You don't have the device, you don't need the device, right? So I don't need this, okay. So you can see on the Duo, it looks exactly the same as the device I was showing, right? It looks exactly the same. But if you do it on the Neo, then you can see that I can fit 3 images because the screen resolution is different. So when I generate that preview, I actually generate it as it was on the device. So I've added the Galaxy Fold as it would look on the Galaxy Fold. So of course on the Galaxy Fold, you're not forced to provide a differentiated UI because it can span across the 2 screens. There is no content occluded. But I'd be more than happy to add more devices as people ask for it. So it's quite easy to add one. So yeah.
Very cool.
All right. Any other questions?
All right. Thank you very much.
All right.
Presentation.
All right.
Our first
you're welcome.
Meetup.
Yeah. So far it worked.
Yeah, seems to.
So it's good. And then I'm going to let the video online. It's on YouTube. So if you want to share it to your colleagues or some other people, then feel free to do so. And then they can watch it again.
All right. Have a good night. Thank you.
Right. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone, for joining.